What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
In the Internet of the noughties, there was a popular euphemism such as BP, which stands for Big P, and means an analog of the apocalypse. The term is almost out of use, but the topic of survival in the post-apocalyptic future is of interest to many people around the world today. Some as a game or hobby, and some even seriously. Survivalists build caches with stew and ammunition, master medical, construction, repair and other applied skills, radio communication, and shooting skills, and in general are preparing in every possible way for the onset of the gloomy post-industrial era, when supermarkets, McDonald's, mobile internet, central heating and other car sharing will have to be forgotten as a lost paradise. And we will also have to forget about the developed network of round-the-clock gas stations that we are accustomed to. Fuel, like the notorious ammunition and stew, risks becoming a strategic value for which people will kill each other in a society rapidly slipping into the Middle Ages. However, in addition to post-apocalyptic fantasies, many people have quite rational reasons to make an inviolable fuel reserve for the future. Someone remembers well the gasoline shortage of the USSR in the 80-90s, when motorists spent nights in queues at gas stations, and is sure that in the current instability everything can return. Some people, due to the geography of their residence, are at risk of being cut off from the world for a long time at any moment due to avalanches, snowfalls, hurricanes and other natural or man-made disasters. A serious accident at a regional oil refinery, some kind of turmoil in which the authorities can restrict fuel sales, scenarios like the Yugoslav, Argentine and other similar ones. You cannot be sure of anything. There are plenty of recent examples. Fuel shortages with multi-kilometer queues and bans on canister sales occurred in 2021 in our country more than once at gas stations. In Khabarovsk due to problems at the refinery, in Sakhalin due to miscalculations in logistics, in the Bryansk region for unknown reasons, etc. Kazakhstan's story, which is now on the rumor mill, began in late December in the Shymkent region due to the rise in gas prices, but if you read not Russian news resources, but local ones, you will see that a gasoline collapse started there a month earlier. The massive fuel crisis in Great Britain in August-September turned out to be post-apocalyptic in the Hollywood way. Gentlemen who had forgotten their primness were punching each other in the face in lines at gas stations, and regular army forces had to pull them apart. So, as you can see, there is a reason to have a personal mini-refueling station in your garage or shed, and quite justified. But here is the problem: fuel, unlike stew, ammunition, matches and salt, is poorly stored. Additives disintegrate, precipitation falls, caloric content decreases. How can we make sure that the strategic reserve does not become just a means for making fires? What happens to fuel over time? According to the old Soviet GOSTs, gasoline was able to be stored harmlessly for up to 5 years. If this were actually the case, then there would be no problem for modern survivalists wearing tinfoil hats. Make a stock of any volume and keep it. 5 years is quite a decent period. However, important nuances greatly distorted this cloudless picture. First, the fuel had to be stored in ideal conditions, minimum temperature differences, which were ensured by a huge mass of temperature. Inert fuel in tanks buried deep in the ground without access to air. The tanks were filled without air gap, and temperature expansion was compensated by rubber compensators, airtight inflatable cushions. And secondly, 5 years of storage did not mean that the fuel did not deteriorate its properties. Simply in Soviet times high-octane varieties in principle were not in common use, and the engines of cars in which it was supposed to be poured easily digested very low-grade gasoline, not to distinguish between fresh and 5-year-old. For these cars were either military ZILs and UAZs, designed for half an hour of battle, or agricultural machinery with engines of the same stages of evolution. When modern engines with high compression ratios, high revolutions and hot modes of operation displaced primitive ancient slow-speed engines, it became clear that 5-year fuel was no longer suitable for them. The GOST was corrected, and the current standard promises guaranteed safety of gasoline for only 1 year. What happens to fuel from time from the physical and chemical points of view? Lev V. Marshulin, senior researcher at Gazprom Vnigas LLC, candidate of technical sciences, told Colsom about it. Anti-detonation additives decaying over time cause a drop in octane number. This is probably the most basic and serious effect of gasoline aging. At the same time, light fractions are lost, propane, butane, isopentane, etc. They are responsible for fuel vaporizability and are especially important when starting a cold engine. In fact, they are called starting fractions. Such parameter as saturated vapor pressure, SVP, changes towards deterioration, in simple terms, the ability of fuel to vaporize. Summer and winter gasoline, the latter, is brought to the gas stations from October to April, differ from each other by DNP figures. Winter fuel should evaporate better in frost, and summer fuel should not evaporate excessively, which threatens the formation of vapor. Plugs in the supply system. Also, with the introduction of cracking processes at refineries everywhere, the content of unsaturated hydrocarbons, butylenes, pentanes, etc. has increased in gasoline. During storage at elevated temperatures, their intensive osmolization begins. Gasoline visually changes color, and inside the engine, carbon monoxide formation increases sharply. Moreover, fuel produced by older straight-run technologies, when, by the way, there was GOST about 5-year shelf life, suffered from this effect much less. To summarize briefly, 3 negative processes occur when fuel is stored for a long time without any special measures. The octane number decreases, volatile fractions decompose and vaporize, olefins are osmolized. Well, since the car owner is not interested in spherical chemistry in a vacuum, but in physical effects, we can reinterpret these 3 factors as follows: detonation, combustion in the engine, it makes it harder to start; contamination of plugs, valves, combustion chamber surface. Of the results of the above 3 processes, octane reduction, decomposition and vaporization of volatile fractions and osmolization of olefins, 2 are practically irreversible, difficult starting and soot formation. There is nothing much you can do about it, and you just have to accept it. The starter will spin longer, the plugs will have to be changed or cleaned. In the post-apocalyptic world you can't change much more often. But in general, it will not interfere with the operation of the car. The only dangerous factor is detonation, which can destroy the engine quite quickly. The drop in octane number can be significant, and it will eventually not be compensated by automatic 4 injectors or manual 4 carburetors, correction of the ignition advance angle. However, octane number drop is just a reversible factor. If not by 100%, then it is quite possible to make generally suitable gasoline from expired. So if your plans are to create a survivalist's inviolable reserve, you can try it. By the way, a little practical advice from our expert: if you are going to start long-term storage, it is better to make a reserve in winter. For with the inevitable loss of light starting fractions over time, winter fuel will last a little longer with all other things being equal. First it will become in some time as summer fuel in terms of DNP level, and then it will begin to deteriorate in relation to the properties of summer fuel. And the evaporative characteristics of summer gasoline start to deteriorate essentially immediately. Fuel additives: the only problem is that a quarter-liter bottle costs about 900 rubles. If we imagine our gasoline fund in the form of, say, a 1,000-liter Euro cube at a price of 52 rubles per liter and add magic chemistry to it in the ratio recommended by the manufacturer, we will need 20 bottles of stabilizer for the amount of 18,000 rubles. Paranoia is not cheap. In what to store a stock of gasoline? Aluminum is good because in addition to the optimal balance of strength and neutrality has also absolute opacity. And protection of fuel from light is very important. The only problem is that the most common aluminum containers are 20-liter canisters. But the tanks, for a decent volume, are extremely expensive. A second hand, we do not even advise you to think about the price of a new one. Fuel tank from a tractor Fury of 300 liters costs 25,000 rubles. Liters of 500 to 600, already thousands of 40. It is easier with plastic. Canisters for 20 to 30 liters can be bought in unlimited quantities for 30 to 50 rubles from detergents or other water-soluble chemistry, or even cheaper. They are convenient volume, which is easily canted and used by one person. But in the pluses lie the minuses. In such small volumes of gasoline is highly susceptible to temperature swings and translucent. Plastic transmits light, whose ultraviolet oxidizes additives. 200-liter polyethylene barrels in this regard are more correct container. They cost 800,100 rubles and better resist the light as they are made of thick polymer of blue, sometimes black color. Although you will have to take gasoline from them and refill it either with a pump or through an artisan ally cut-in bottom tap, and it is difficult to observe the level as well as the ability to roll alone. The coolest, of course, is the so-called Eurocube, a cubic container for a ton in a metal shell with access to the contents from both above and below. There are both translucent and black. The latter, of course, is preferable. Cost 3 to 5,000 rubles per cube, once used for food products such as juice concentrate or soy sauce, the remains of which are easily washed out with water. However, such a no-nonsense stock is only for seriously concerned survivalists who know a lot about true madness. Rotation. Even with small average annual mileage, rotation will allow to completely ignore all factors of fuel aging and always have a quality reserve even with a significant reserve, like a cube per ton. Take, for example, the typical mileage of a city dweller for a year, 15,000 kilometers. If we consider the consumption of 8 liters per 100 kilometers, it is 1,200 liters of gasoline per year and 100 liters per month. To keep the gasoline in perfect safety, it is enough to replace half of the volume during the year, once a month to fill up with 40 liters from your own gas tank for everyday trips and replenish the volume by bringing a couple of 20-liter jerry cans back from a regular gas station. In conclusion, while the idea of creating a gasoline reserve for a year may seem daunting, it can provide a crucial safety net in times of economic disaster. By understanding your consumption needs and the logistics of storage, you can make informed decisions about whether this step is necessary for your situation. Remember, preparation is key, but it's equally important to stay adaptable and informed about the changing landscape of fuel availability and prices. Ultimately, the choice to build a gasoline reserve should align with your personal circumstances and risk tolerance. Thank you for watching, and stay safe and prepared.